Today I'm going to talk about the story of Reddit, a discussion site with user-generated content that is the self-proclaimed front page of the internet. It's got 52 million daily active users worldwide and has a valuation of $10 billion. It's also the 10th most popular social network in the US and one of the most popular social networks in the world. The company has definitely been through a lot of ups and downs, but a lot of the time tech giants like this are kind of glamorized by the media, and for that reason I wanted to talk about the story of them, how they started, how the founders met, everything from the beginning right until now, or as much as I could get into this video at least. Quick disclaimer, all of the information in this video is information that is publicly available online. I managed to try and fit as much as possible into this kind of story, but obviously 16 years of work is very difficult to fit into a short video, so that's something to keep in mind. Also, feel free to fact check me in the comments if there's something significant that you feel I've missed out or if something has been slightly misquoted. Finally, trigger warning, later on I touch on someone who takes their own life. I talk about some details of the case surrounding it, not into too much detail, but just something to be aware of if that's something that makes you uncomfortable. So there were two founders that were involved right at the beginning of Reddit. We're going to start with their backgrounds. So the first one is Alexis Ohanian. Alexis Ohanian was born on the 24th of April 1983. He was born in Brooklyn, New York, and 3 years later him and his parents moved to Maryland, and that's where he grew up. His dad is of Armenian American heritage. His grandparents had immigrated from Armenia to the US in order to escape the Armenian genocide, and they went to the US as refugees. His dad was a small business owner. In 1998, he founded a global travel company, and his mum immigrated from Hamburg, Germany in 1976 to the US, and she worked as a pharmacy technician. So growing up, Alexis loved video games, and he managed to convince his parents to buy his first computer towards the end of middle school. When he started learning and playing around with it, he taught himself HTML and started learning how to code and make websites. He started by making websites for charities and non-profit organizations for free, and he said that sparked something entrepreneurial in him. His first job during high school was at a CompUSA, where he would basically demo hardware and software to people in the store, and he would just have to publicly speak and explain this software or this hardware and talk about how it works, and a lot of the time people would ignore him, so he says. He then went to work at a Pizza Hut from 1999 to 2001. He started off as a dishwasher, then became a cook, then became a waiter, and he said that this was such an invaluable experience and it taught him everything he needed to know about customer service, especially later on when it came to Reddit. He was convinced he wanted to be a lawyer, specifically an immigration lawyer, because this topic was quite close to home, and so he majored in history with a minor in German, and he did some commerce modules, and he went to the University of Virginia. He then decided that it wasn't really for him when he was doing the LSAT, and so he kind of took another path. Next is the other co-founder, Steve Huffman. Steve was born on the 12th of November 1983 in Warrenton, Virginia, and he grew up with his parents and 3 younger siblings. His mum was practicing to be a lawyer as she was raising them, and there isn't that much information about what his dad did. He was very into programming after being introduced to it by his dad at the age of around 8. He started by building a calculator to start with so that it could help him solve problems, and he just loved it from there. He went on to study computer science at the University of Virginia. He was also a ballroom dancer at the same time, which was quite a random thing, and competed in some competitions during his time at university. So on their first day at the University of Virginia in 2001 at Hancock House, Steve was walking down the corridor and saw the name Alexis on the wall opposite his. He thought that he lived in a mixed gender dorm, but then after meeting Alexis realized that that wasn't the case. Alexis saw the PlayStation 2 in Steve's room and instantly got excited and knew that they were going to hit it off. During introductions, while Steve was talking to Alexis, a few girls walked in as part of the introductions, and Alexis went, heated up some cookies and gave it to them to impress them. Steve made a note realizing that he's an extremely charming person, and it was just something that he remembered. They started bonding over computers, video games, PlayStation, and really hit it off, and they became really good friends and lived together for the rest of their university career. Basically, they had a similar sense of humor, and as gamers they felt like they wanted to be game developers in the future. Alexis noted that Steve was a really good programmer. In their final year, that's when they kind of became a bit more serious about building something and working on a product. In 2005, in their final year of university, Steve had an idea for an app called My Mobile Menu. The idea came about because one day when he was at the gas station, he realized that you could order kind of like Subway sandwiches from these kiosks or indoor machines, and once you order them, you didn't need any human interaction in order for the person to make the sandwich. He realized, since everybody has phones, why can't they just have an app that allows you to order it so you could cut some time while filling the gas in your car? He spoke to Alexis about this idea, and they thought, this is a really great idea and it could potentially work. They were thinking about how it could be done logistically. So Alexis found a local lawyer and incorporated a company and called it Red Brick Solutions. After a while of them working on My Mobile Menu, abbreviated as because of the MMM, in March 2005, Katie, Steve's girlfriend at the time, told Steve that one of his idols was giving a talk at Harvard during their spring break. This was Paul Graham giving a talk about how to start a startup, and Steve was super excited. He told Alexis that they have to go, especially because they are working on and they need to talk to him and get his book signed. He had a book of his and he wanted to get it signed. So Alexis said sure, why not? It was in the middle of spring break, so they drove up from Virginia to Boston to go and listen to this talk. Quick background on Paul Graham. He's a successful entrepreneur, computer scientist, investor and essay writer, which made him popular at that time. Now he was really well known for being one of the founding partners of Y Combinator, the accelerator that Reddit would later join. To date, they've provided early stage investment for companies like Airbnb, DoorDash, Coinbase, Dropbox, Stripe, Instacart, Monzo, Twitch, and many, many more, so billion-dollar companies. After the talk, Alexis went and started speaking to Paul, and he mentioned that Steve really wanted to get his book signed. He called Steve over and they were talking, and he mentioned that they came from Virginia. Paul was really shocked that they drove all the way from Virginia to come to listen to the talk, and so after they asked, is it possible for us to go and have a coffee and talk about My Mobile Menu, which is a company that they're working on, and Paul just said, yeah, of course, like, since you guys came all the way, let's go later to this cafe and we could talk about it. When they got to the cafe, they pitched him the idea, My Mobile Menu, and he loved it. He started going off on one, talking about how this is going to be the end of lines, and he basically said he loved the idea. Steve and Alexis were so happy. They were so happy that they got his approval, that he loved the idea, drove home, and were really, really excited about what he said. Alexis mentioned to Steve a couple weeks later, maybe you should email him a follow-up email telling him thanks for meeting us and just letting him know that, you know, they were really happy after that, and just a nice little follow-up email. Steve said sure, he emailed him, and shortly after, Paul responded saying, I'm going to start this investment company and I would love you guys to apply. We're holding interviews next month, so make sure you apply and this could be great. They went to Boston, they pitched their idea, and they felt like they nailed it. In the back of their head, they already felt like Paul already liked the idea because that's what he told them. He already liked them, so they pretty much thought that they were in. They were so happy until later that evening where Alexis got a call from Paul saying, I'm afraid you didn't make it through. They were super confused. They went out late that night, they got super drunk, and they were thinking of how, you know, we're going to show them, we're going to make sure that we make this successful, blah, blah, blah. Let's just pick it back up tomorrow, go back home and take it from there. So they had their train ride the next day. It was an 18-hour train ride, and halfway through, Alexis gets a call from Paul saying, we really like you guys, but we don't like your idea. So if you can turn around right now, come back and we can discuss another idea, then we can accept you. So are you guys willing to do that? So they took a second and they were like, yeah, sure. Got off the train, got on the next train straight back up to Boston, and basically went up and started brainstorming. What other ideas could we do? What else? They had already spent a year researching restaurants and everything to do with what My Mobile Menu is about, so they felt a bit down, or like the year was a bit wasted, but they just thought, you know what, like this could be a great opportunity, let's just brainstorm and think of something else. Paul had advised them not to build a mobile app because this was just before the App Store was created, like a couple years before the iPhone wasn't out, and so it would be really, really difficult to get an application out there. So he said, instead, just think about a website. Think about a website that you could build that would be way better, easier, and more people would be able to reach it. When they first got into the room, one of the first things that Graham said to them is, you know who's onto something? Slashdot. And then he proceeded to show them the website. Slashdot was a website that was launched in October 1997 and can be described as an online newspaper or social news website. Their slogan is News for Nerds, Stuff That Matters. It's still active today, actually. The topics were about technology, science, programming, along with other things, and each story had a comment section that allows users to share opinions. The website had user-submitted and editor-evaluated current tech news, similar to how Reddit became. They had a user-based moderation system. By June 1998, the website had 100,000 page views and advertisers were becoming interested. By December that year, they had made $18,000 in revenues, and this was expected to increase. Bear in mind, at this time in 1998, the internet was very different to how it is now. So word of mouth and sharing links was really different to how we do it in social media now. So this was a lot. In June 1999, it was acquired by Linus-owned Andover Net for $1.5 million in cash and $7 million in Andover stock at the IPO. Steve and Alexis liked it, because of the content that was on their website mainly. There was also another site called Delicious that was interesting to them. Delicious was a social bookmarking app that was founded in 2003. It allows users to access the same bookmarks from any computer and bookmark their favorite websites and articles, or to find topical content based on hashtags suggested by users. Delicious was acquired by Yahoo in 2005 when they had 300,000 users. They didn't disclose the amount that they sold it for, but it's speculated to have been between $10 to $15 million. They had a page called Popular where all the popular links were uploaded onto the site, but a lot of the time these were links that led onto another website and you would kind of save it for later, so it wouldn't really be in the moment. Paul Graham came across Delicious when his essays were being linked on the Popular page quite a lot, which were generating a lot of traffic for his essays, and that's how he noticed it. They thought that this was a good idea, but it could have been better. Instead of having these long links that you'd get back to later, what if you just had short links that you could share right now in the moment? They brainstormed this idea of having short messages or short notes that people would read right there and then. Alexis and Steve liked the mechanism of the Popular page of Delicious. Fun fact, Delicious was bought by Chad Hurley and Steve Chen, the YouTube founders, in 2011 for an undisclosed amount from Yahoo. At the time, there was a lot of content being created on the internet and it was kind of all over the place. They had a 2-hour discussion with Paul Graham, and after speaking about these other ideas, they ended up thinking that their new project was no longer going to be My Mobile Menu. Forget about that. Instead, they were going to be working on this new thing, a combination of Slashdot and Delicious, but made a bit better. Paul summed it up as them needing to build the front page of the internet, and they got gassed. They loved the idea. They were just like, this is it. This is going to change the game. He then bought them a ticket to go home and pretty much said, we'll see you a bit later on when you come back. At that time, Steve was working at a place called Image Matters, which was a local high-tech government contracted startup. Essentially, he had been given an offer to join them after graduation. He decided to quit his job so that he could pursue this new project that he was going to work on with Alexis, and his mum was quite skeptical about that. She just thought, you know, it's better off to be safe and have somewhere with health insurance, but Steve thought, why not? There's nothing to lose and it's just going to be a summer where we're working on this cool idea. After Alexis and Steve graduated from UVA in the summer of 2005, they moved down to Boston and started essentially getting ready to work on this new idea. YC had agreed to give them $6,000 each, so $12,000 in total, to work on this idea over the summer for their rent and their food and everything they needed for that duration, that period of time. They started working all day and all night. They would get up around 10 a.m. on average, work until around midnight, and just repeat the next day. Whenever they'd have a break, it would usually just be for food and playing World of Warcraft, and then they'd get back on it because they were just trying to get it done as quick as possible. Steve had never built a website before. His first line of code to write a website was in June of that year, and so he was learning how to build the infrastructure while Alexis was focusing on the logo, the design, and everything else that did not include the tech side. Steve was the tech guy and Alexis was the non-tech guy doing everything else. He was the only non-technical guy at YC, so at the time people would kind of make fun of him, but it needed to be done and it was definitely useful for him to be doing that while Steve was focusing on the code. Alexis had come up with a lot of names and Steve had thought of a couple too, but none of them were really hitting the spot. They came up with Riper Fresh, Poplex, Popzar. Steve came up with bufflist.com with a tag that said surf in the buff. Finally, they were torn between the name Reddit or Snoo. Snoo would be like, what's Snoo today? And Reddit would be like, I read it on Reddit. When they came to buy the domain, Snoo was like $4,000 and they couldn't afford that, so they checked Reddit and it was completely free, so they just got that instead. Alexis did some doodles and it eventually became the Reddit logo. They also called the mascot Snoo instead. Paul Graham would email them very regularly. He would update them every time he had a new idea for a feature, which was pretty much daily, just helping them brainstorm. Also, he would send them check-in emails. One day they received an email from Paul Graham and it was a check-in email of week 2 and it really rubbed them up the wrong way. Paul's email was essentially being like, what the hell, why aren't you ready yet? You either haven't launched yet or you're not capable of doing that, and he doesn't know which one is worse. Steve got really annoyed by this, but a week later, so 3 weeks into them working on it, he sent him an email saying the first version is now ready. Reddit was the first Y Combinator company to launch. The product was extremely basic, but Paul Graham knew the importance of having a minimum viable product that they could test with users and getting it out there to test as soon as possible. It was basically a website where users could go post something that they wanted to talk about and other users can either upvote or downvote. If it got upvoted, then it would go to the top of the page and the ones that were the most popular would be at the top of the page. At that time, they also had this rule that there would be 25 links in the front page, and anytime someone would make a post or interact or something like that, they would get karma points. They weren't really thinking about business model or an advertising model right then. They just knew that if users came, then they could figure it out later. In the beginning, they weren't really sure how to come up with these upvotes and downvotes. At first, they thought of having kind of an interesting or boring written next to each one, but then they just scrapped that idea. They also thought about having a 5-star ranking system, but they thought, what's the difference between having a 3-star or 5 stars on a post? So they scrapped that too. They thought about having a thumbs up and thumbs down, but they didn't want it to be endorsing the post. They just wanted to be an acknowledgement or something that a user wanted to be popular, not necessarily that they agreed with it by pressing the like button. Finally, they settled on these upvotes and downvotes. These were basic arrows pointing up or down, similar to what it's like today. At the beginning, they were the ones that were uploading the content. They made 100 accounts and they were just posting information and content on there so that other people would think that there were a lot of others on it, but in fact it was just them two. This was quite smart of them because it is a kind of chicken and egg problem. You do need users in order for other users to feel comfortable to use it, and so that was one way that they got around that. They tried different ways of marketing by reaching out to friends, telling everyone they know to share it with someone they know, messaging it to everyone, trying to reach out to bloggers and other people that were writing at the time on the internet, but things weren't like how they are today. The network effect wasn't as prominent. There was Facebook, but Facebook was still for college students at the time, and so they were thinking of other ways of getting it out there. They started getting some users in August, but it wasn't really until October of that year when Paul Graham made another essay called What I Did This Summer, and he included reddit.com as a link to that essay. This gave them their first 1,000 users. He didn't actually tell Steve and Alexis that he was going to do this, but this got them a lot of users, and it kind of set the precedent of the type of people that were going onto the page. Steve mentioned that he just saw the number of users going up and only found out a bit later on that it was actually all from Paul's essay. On more of a personal note, in the first couple of months after the launch of Reddit, Alexis got a call from his girlfriend's mother in Germany saying that his girlfriend had fallen out of a 5-story window and she is in a hospital. He flew out there immediately and she was in a coma for the next 4 or 5 months. She came back to the US in December of that year and made a full recovery, which was really lucky, but this was really, really shocking to him. About a month later, after he found out about his girlfriend, he got a call from his dad. He told him that his mother wasn't feeling well. When he flew over the next day, he found out that his mum had a brain tumor and she had been diagnosed with terminal 4 brain cancer, which was really, really hard on them all. Alexis describes this time as extremely tough, but it was able to put a lot of things into perspective. It also clouds his vision of how Reddit was at the time because he had gone through a lot and it was really, really hard. Now on to Reddit's growth. About 6 months after Reddit was founded, they merged with another company called Infogamy around November 2005 to January 2006. Aaron Swartz was the founder of Infogamy and he was also a fellow YC alum. He was part of the first batch that Reddit was a part of. Infogamy can be described as a business intelligence solution that turns raw data into information that enables businesses to gain insights, improve decision making, reduce costs, and support strategic objectives. Quick background on Aaron Swartz. So Aaron was born on the 8th of November 1986. And he grew up in Highland Park, which is a suburb of Chicago. He lived with both his parents and 2 younger brothers and was raised in a Jewish household, although later he decided that he wasn't religious. His dad was a computer and IP consultant, which meant that Aaron was around computers since the day he was born. His family also had one of the first Macs that came out. At the age of 3, he read a leaflet that was on the fridge and his mum was so shocked about that because she didn't even know he could read. By the time he was in kindergarten, he was reading novels, and so his parents sent him to an elementary school for gifted children. Their family had access to the internet from when he was around 6 or 7, so he started to learn how to code and build computer programs. One of the first ones that he built was a Sudoku game, and after that he built loads of different projects throughout his time in elementary school. One of the first big projects that he worked on was the info.org, which was basically Wikipedia before Wikipedia. While he was in high school, he absolutely hated it. His dad understood where he was coming from because he also found it really, really dull. So when Aaron was in 9th grade, his father let him drop out, so long as he continued to go to the local college and continue taking classes and learning through books and online and things like that. He reportedly read over 100 books a year. At the age of 14, he helped to develop the RSS software that enabled syndication of information over the internet. At the age of 15, he emailed one of the internet law professors at Stanford University called Lawrence Lessig, who was a Stanford law professor and ended up helping him write the code for the Creative Commons as a metadata advisor, which was Aaron's official job title. The work included writing alternatives to standard copyright laws, which allowed people to share their work more freely, essentially a group who would push for looser copyright laws. Aaron got accepted into Stanford University as part of his undergrad. While he was in first year, he got accepted into the Y Combinator program, the same one that the Reddit guys had got into, and so he decided that he didn't want to continue with education. He also found it quite shallow. He found a lot of people shallow at university and he just wasn't really into it. He decided that he wanted to go to YC and continue working on his content management startup, Infogamy. And then at the age of 19, around November 2005 to January 2006, that's when Infogamy merged with Reddit. They continued working out their 3-bedroom apartment in Boston. Aaron moved in and he was helping Steve with the programming. They also had another guy called Christopher Slow who was around 5 years older than them. He was working part-time while he was studying his PhD in physics at Harvard. Over time, Reddit evolved. At the end of 2005, comment sections were added. Next, content became divided into categories called subreddits or communities, where people would go and talk about general topics. In 2006, the NSFW, Not Safe for Work, subreddit became the most popular on the website, followed by programming, then science, which got launched and becomes third. By January 2006, Reddit is the 11th most visited site in America. This popularity leads us to the next stage of Reddit, the stage where they start talking about exit opportunities and acquisition offers. Around this time, Jessica Livingston, one of the founding partners of Y Combinator, also Paul Graham's wife, suggests that Alexis go to New York as kind of a press tour. She says, go speak to a few people over there, get the word out about Reddit, and then just see how it goes. So he flew over to New York, he stayed with a friend, and he started just having different meetings with different reporters. One of these reporters was a woman called Rachel. Rachel was a freelance reporter, and she was talking to him about Reddit and asking questions, but shortly after they decided that they didn't really want to make this a business relationship. They got on pretty well, so they thought, let's remain friends, we'll stay in touch, see how everything goes, but she didn't really want to write a story, and he was just like, that's completely fine, whatever, we can stay in touch. A few weeks later, Alexis got an email from a guy called Karush Karimkhani. Karush was the head of digital at a place called Condé Nast, and he told him that his wife, who was an editor at Wired, had been told about Reddit by one of his writers, who was Rachel. He told him that he wanted a call just to talk about Reddit and basically share thoughts. So Alexis said, cool, no problem, we could talk. It also happened that Karush was the head of M&A or mergers and acquisitions at Condé Nast, and he was basically mandated with a task to find companies that could help them grow their digital site, whether it's social networking companies or community-based platforms, and Reddit was just the ideal for this. During their call, Karush spoke about a test project that they were working on called Lipstick, which was basically similar to Reddit but about celebrities and under the Condé Nast umbrella. He wanted to get opinions about it, and then 5 months later it escalated to acquisition talks, but this was an important part of the relationship that was built. On the 31st October 2006, Condé Nast made an acquisition offer to buy Reddit for between $10 to $20 million. It's been reported that since then it was actually for around $10 million, but nonetheless, for 16 months work, this was a great deal. They had to think about it a lot, but given the personal situation that Alexis was going through, the amount of time that they felt that they worked on it, and how much potential value that they thought they could receive, it definitely seemed like an offer that was worth it at the time. The deal took months to finalize, but they eventually got there, and part of the deal was that they would move up to San Francisco to the Wired offices, since Condé Nast also owned Wired, and they would work there, and their contract stated that they had to be there for a minimum of 3 years. In November 2020, Alexis posted a string of tweets about the acquisition and the exit and how he felt and his thought process during that time. He mentioned that his mum's illness weighed on him a lot, and he wanted her to see that 10 million exit. Although he might regret it as a business standpoint, as a decision in itself, he didn't regret it. He noted that he also wished he had more advisors around the table, giving him more of a perspective on the sale, or an investor to tell him that there are other options like raising a Series A or something, since the company was growing really fast. He also said that he pitched Reddit to the leadership of WPNI, Washington Post Newsweek Interactive, which was then the online publishing subsidiary of the Washington Post company that operated news and information sites, including WashingtonPost.com, Slate, Newsweek.com, and Budget Travel Online. They did diligence on a potential acquisition of Reddit, but didn't want to compete with Condé Nast's offer, so they passed. About 3 months after Reddit got acquired by Condé Nast, Aaron Swartz was asked to leave. He had made it clear that he didn't like the new environment. Alexis and Steve stayed though, and they stayed for the next 3 years until their contract had finished. Aaron wrote in a blog post, "The first day I showed up here, I simply couldn't take it. By lunchtime, I had literally locked myself in a bathroom stall and started crying." Not only did he hate the corporate office environment, but he also hated San Francisco too. When he was asked about why they let him go, he said, "I was unhappy working in an office and didn't hide it, so I'd come in late and set up lots of off-site meetings and stuff, and my boss wasn't really thrilled about that. Also, I think he was upset about me disappearing for so long on vacation." One of the places I went to in Europe was the Chaos Computer Conference, and while I was there, I hung out with my friend Quinn Norton, who was reporting on the event for Wired. She took my photo for one of her articles, and it was featured on Wired.com's front page. Ha! I joked. I bet the first time my boss finds out where I am is when he sees my photo on the front page of his own website. So, the next question is, where has Reddit been since the exit? Well, in January 2008, they allowed users to create their own subreddits or communities. In October 2009, Steve and Alexis left Reddit. After 3 years, their contracts were coming to an end, and they decided they wanted to do something a bit different. Alexis went to Armenia, where his dad's side of the family was from, because he hadn't been before and he wanted a reset. Steve wanted to build a product that was revenue generating or involved in the exchange of money, and that's where he founded Hipmunk, a travel company. Condé Nast bought Reddit as an effort to grow their digital side, but shortly after, the financial crisis hit, and the employees at Reddit didn't feel like they were giving them enough resources to allow them to grow or to even sustain the growth that they were having. This made it really difficult. They were unable to hire people, and it led to a lot of unhappiness within the team. Steve reportedly felt burnt out, and he was just fed up of receiving so many emails from angry Redditors telling him what's wrong with it and constantly checking the website even when he was on holiday. They only had 6 employees, and it just didn't feel like they could continue. At this point, Steve and Alexis had lived together for 8 years, and there was a lot of unspoken tension between them as founders and as best friends. There was a lot of things that they kind of swept under the rug and they didn't really speak about, so they had kind of gone their separate ways. They didn't really have an efficient way of solving disputes. They didn't have a way of identifying whose roles were whose at their time during Reddit, and it just wasn't the best ending. And so, apart from Alexis helping draw the logo for Hipmunk and a few little projects here and there, they didn't really have that much communication. At one point, they completely stopped speaking to each other. They describe it more as neglect in their friendship. After all, Alexis was Steve's best man at his wedding in 2009, and so they went from being really, really good friends to not talking. Alexis became more of an activist, and Steve dived fully into the entrepreneurial world. In 2010, Reddit was in a lot of trouble, and Mike, a developer that was hired in 2008, as well as Christopher Slow, decided to take it into their own hands. He wrote a blog post, titled it "Reddit Needs Help," and he released it. It was an open letter to the users of Reddit, and basically spoke about how it seems like every week something else comes up with Reddit, which is stopping them from being able to make new features. He asked the community to consider paying for Reddit through Reddit Gold, which was pretty much donations through a premium membership service. At first, it was a bit of a running joke that anybody would use Reddit Gold, especially on Reddit, but after they realized that they were serious, a lot of core users decided to back them. They released the blog on a Friday night because they didn't want the Condé Nast executives to see, otherwise they would have been angry. It would have looked like they were begging people on the internet to fund something that was essentially supposed to be backed by a large company. After some of the executives found out on Monday morning, they were fuming until they realized that Reddit Gold had actually made 6 figures just over one weekend, so they decided to keep it. In February 2011, Reddit hit 1 billion page views per month, and this doubled in January 2012 to 2 billion per month. Also in 2011, Condé Nast spun off Reddit as an independent company, which was really great for them. This meant that they could raise their own money, be treated independently, and also just be a bit more free in how they decided to take the company forward. In 2015, Reddit goes mad. They just raised $50 million, but the users, some of them at least, were being extremely toxic, and the platform itself was just getting a lot of negative press and just a lot of people talking about it in a negative way because it was just extremely toxic. At the same time, around February 2015, Steve reached out to Alexis. They hadn't spoken in ages, and it just didn't feel great without having each other in their lives. They were best friends, and he just felt like he needed to reach out to him, especially with everything going on with Reddit. It had been around 5 years since they both left Reddit, and Steve reached out asking Alexis if he wanted to go for dinner. They both agreed to work on their friendship, and Steve suggested Alexis come along to his therapy sessions. His therapist thought it would be a good idea, and they kind of went to therapy together, which helped them build and work on their relationship. While they actively worked on this, they both also agreed to come back to Reddit and try and fix all this bad stuff that was going on. In July 2015, it kind of reached a boiling point. The users they called moderators were super upset. They took down their computers and their communities basically went offline. It was like Reddit was just having a blackout for a good few days. A few years earlier, their biggest competitor called Dig, who were 5 times bigger than Reddit, basically committed suicide. They released a new version of their software that users disliked so much that a lot of their users came to Reddit instead. Steve and Alexis were conscious that if it could happen to Dig, someone as big as them, then it could definitely happen to Reddit, and that's what they were scared of. Steve decided to return to Reddit as CEO in 2015, and on his first day, he posted an AMA, Ask Me Anything, for users in their communities to get to know as much about him as possible, and at the same time, Alexis decided to come back and join full-time. Shortly after, Reddit decided to ban the toxic users. A few of the subreddits subreddits were outright banned, and they introduced a quarantine system where offensive subreddits would only be viewed by subscribers who had to sign up using an email address. Steve spoke about wanting Reddit to be a reflection of humanity and not innately perfect in itself, because humanity isn't perfect. He said, "What you get on Reddit is an authentic representation of what is going on in the world." This caused some controversy because a lot of people said if you have the means to ban these sexist or racist or whatever comments, then why don't they do that? And this is a problem that a lot of companies are going through right now, a lot of huge tech companies. In 2016, they also launched the iPhone and Android apps. 2017, they added a feature to allow users to upload videos up to 15 minutes long instead of posting just third-party links like YouTube videos. This feature has blown up, and the statistic in 2018 showed that 1.4 billion native videos were being viewed by users every month. In 2020, they acquired a company called Dubsmash, which enabled them to integrate their video creation tools onto the Reddit platform. They continued to build and cleanse the website, removing racists, trolls, controversial communities, misogynists, and any negative associations, with a plan to go public because, as Steve says, any good company should aim to IPO. The team has said that they want Reddit to remain a place for open discussion and to be able to fight ignorance in this way, and Reddit should be able to facilitate conversations that may be difficult, just like in reality. Alexis insists that any type of harassment is banned from the site, while also trying to encourage freedom of speech and open dialogue. Over the past 16 years, there's been a lot of positive and negative associations with Reddit.
The ripple effects of social media are that you start to see people's lives get changed.
Whether it's just like saving them from a boring day at work or creating this political rally in DC.
Kids get transplants, and bus monitors in New York get hundreds of thousands of dollars in anonymous donations from all over the world. That really starts changing lives.
In June 2020, Alexis resigned from the board of Reddit during the wake of the George Floyd and Black Lives Matter movement.
"I'm saying this as a father who needs to be able to answer his black daughter when she asks, 'What did you do?' So, I have resigned as a member of the Reddit board. I have urged them to fill my seat with a black candidate."
He is a big advocate of diversity in tech and recommended that they hire a person of color to replace him, so they did, with Michael Siebel. Michael is the co-founder of Twitch and the CEO and managing director of YC, and he is also a black man. Finally, earlier this year is the famous or infamous, depending on how you look at it, GameStop. In short, the subreddit Wall Street Bets has a community that talks about investing in the stock market. GameStop is a brick and mortar store that sells video games. During the coronavirus pandemic, their stores got hit kind of hard and their business model was dying. So the Wall Street hedge fund started heavily short selling its stock. The Wall Street Bet community noticed that the hedge funds were short selling GameStop shares, assuming that it was going to die. So as a way of retaliation against the corporate system, the Redditors started buying GameStop stock heavily. This increased the value of GameStop's shares, and a lot of these hedge funds lost millions of dollars and had to be bailed out by other banks. You can watch other videos about the details of what happened with GameStop, but essentially this was the first time that a group of ordinary people went against the big banks and the regulated entities. This showed that ordinary people, through communities like the ones that were created in the subreddit, the Wall Street Bets one, and people that are kind of meeting up on the internet, can have a really big impact on the stock market and ultimately a really big impact on the economy. At the end of 2020, Reddit recorded 52 million daily active users. This is a growth of 44% from October 2019, when they had 36 million users. This shows that it's extremely popular and it's growing a lot. In fact, they've been growing ever since they launched. The US has the most number of users, with 18% of adults saying that they use it, although 81% say they use YouTube and 69% say they use Facebook, so it's still got a way to go in that department. As of April 2021, Reddit was ranked as the 15th most popular social network globally. Although it's more popular in English-speaking countries, Germany was ranked within the top 5 countries that use Reddit the most. On average, users go on Reddit for 10 minutes and 23 seconds and typically cover over 8 pages during that time. The site is the most popular between 25 to 29-year-olds, followed by 18 to 24-year-olds. And to date, there have been over 2.8 million subreddits or communities created. That ranges anywhere from tech, science, programming, or very specific niches. Reddit has more than 130,000 active communities, and they consider an active community if it gets 5 or more comments a day. So what happened to the founders and where are they now? As for Steve Huffman, in 2009 he got married, and as mentioned earlier, Alexis Steve was his best man, although now he is divorced. He got his pilot's license and he also bought a 1995 Porsche. He spent the next several years after leaving Reddit the first time building Hipma, the travel company, with a bunch of ex-Redditors and Adam Goldstein, and he stayed there as CTO until he went back to Reddit in 2015. He is now still currently the CEO of Reddit. He appeared in the 30 Under 30 in 2013 that was compiled by Inc. magazine, and in 2020 Fortune magazine listed him as Technology 40 Under 40. In 2016, he got in trouble after admitting that he edited some comments of Donald Trump supporters on Reddit. It turns out he's a really big critic of Donald Trump, and a lot of Redditors weren't happy about this. He was instructor for an e-learning course by the online education provider Udacity, and he is on the board of advisors of the Anti-Defamation League's Center for Technology and Society. As for Alexis Ohanian, he's won many awards including Forbes 30 Under 30 in Tech, 40 Under 40 in Business, and Mayor of the Internet as part of Fast Company's Most Creative People in Business. He helped draw the mascot for Hipmunk. He also worked on a social enterprise called Breadpig. In 2010, he worked as the ambassador of the East as part of Y Combinator, and in 2014 he became a partner at YC and wrote a book titled Without Their Permission. In 2017, quite famously, he got married to Serena Williams, the tennis legend, and they have one daughter named Alexis Olympia Ohanian, born on the 1st of September 2017. He's currently a venture capitalist and early stage tech investor helping other young entrepreneurs avoid making the same mistakes he did. He co-founded the early stage venture capital firm Initialize Capital in 2011 and worked there until 2020 before founding another fund called 776 in September 2020. He's also an advocate of an open internet and has worked on a few creative projects, including backing Rayouf Al-Humedi in 2017 on the Hijabi emoji project to get a hijab emoji on the keyboard, which was accepted by Apple in 2017. And he's also been involved in crowdfunding campaigns, including Black Girls Code. On top of that, he's an advocate for paternity leave and has a podcast called Business Dads. And finally, Aaron Swartz. There was some controversy around whether Aaron was considered a co-founder because Alexis and Steve worked on Reddit, launched it, and received funding before Aaron joined them. Alexis said he considered Aaron as a co-owner and early employee, but not a founder. This is because he had equal ownership to them, and so that's why he was a co-owner, but he didn't found it and he didn't come up with the initial idea. Paul Graham, on the other hand, considers Aaron to be a founder, and so does Aaron himself. Paul said, "The company behind Reddit was a merger of two startups, and in that situation, the founders of both startups are considered founders of the combined company." Aaron maintains that he was a co-founder, and he stuck by that whenever he spoke about it. Aaron was a strong advocate of freedom of speech. He was a political organizer, an entrepreneur, and an internet hacktivist. He was very passionate about everyone being able to access the same amount of information, regardless of their background or where they live. This might have got him into a bit of trouble. At the age of 24 in 2011, he was sued for allegedly violating federal hacking laws after downloading millions of academic articles from a subscription database service called JSTOR that MIT had given him access to. In July that year, a grand jury had indicted him on 4 felony counts, including wire fraud and computer fraud. It later added 9 more. If he was convicted, he could have faced a fine of up to $1 million and also up to 35 years in prison. It was a very controversial case at the time, and according to his girlfriend Taryn, the US Attorney's Office were really trying to make an example out of him. Some were saying he broke the law so he should face the consequences. Some argued that downloading things from online is not technically stealing. Others said that the intention was for the greater good. On the 11th of January 2013, Aaron Swartz died by suicide in his Brooklyn apartment, and a few days later, the US District Office dropped the charges. A year after his death, in January 2014, a documentary about Aaron was released titled The Internet's Own Boy, The Story of Aaron Swartz. Aaron Swartz was undeniably an extremely intelligent guy. He passed away at only 26, and he had made a major impact on the world. In the last years of his life, he said he disliked programming, and one summer in 2009, he went offline completely. He is said to have described this as the best time of his life. Since this is the story of Reddit, I'm not going to go into too many details about the case, but there's a lot of information that you could read about online. So that was the story of Reddit, how it started, how the founders met, their backgrounds, and everything in between. Thank you very much for watching, and please let me know if you enjoyed it.